In 1997, the peaceful town of Clearwood, Ontario, was shattered by the mysterious disappearance of Emma Lawson, a beloved art teacher. It began with fisherman Daniel Murphy discovering Emma's canoe drifting empty on the lake, a single glove and a smear of blood inside. Weeks later, investigators uncovered ritual sites deep in the woods, strange drawings signed by Emma, and finally a chilling Polaroid showing her beside an unknown man. Years on, construction workers unearthed Emma's sketchbooks filled with disturbing symbols and faceless figures. Was Emma a victim, a witness, or a participant? This is Canada's most bizarre mystery. On the surface, Clearwood was the kind of town that seemed untouched by time. Tucked along the edge of a wide Ontario lake, it was a postcard-perfect place where life moved slowly, predictably, and safely. Children could ride their bikes until dusk without fear. Families left windows open at night, and neighbors exchanged warm greetings whenever they crossed paths. Tourists sometimes described it as too quiet, but for the residents, that silence was part of its charm. It was the kind of place where serious crime felt impossible, where even small disputes were settled with apologies over a fence. That's why the discovery on a warm summer evening in 1997 shook Clearwood to its core. A fisherman named Daniel Murphy had been out on the water, casting his line near the far side of the lake. The sun had dipped low, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink when his boat drifted close to a lone canoe. At first, Daniel thought someone had simply forgotten to tie it down at the dock, but as his boat neared, the details told a different story. The canoe wasn't just empty. It carried strange items inside. Lying neatly in the center was a single leather glove, polished and well kept as though placed there intentionally. Beside it, smeared across the wood, was a dark stain that Daniel instantly recognized as dried blood. The sight unsettled him. A canoe adrift could mean anything, an accident, an animal attack, even a prank. But the glove, placed so deliberately, felt like something else. Daniel tied the canoe to his boat and towed it back to shore, his hands trembling as he gripped the rope. By the time he reached the dock, a small crowd had gathered, drawn by whispers that something strange had been pulled from the lake. The police arrived quickly, their flashing lights startling against the fading light of the evening. Officers lifted the canoe carefully from the water, photographing the glove, the smear, and the position of everything inside. To the onlookers, it didn't look like a random accident. It looked like a message. Word spread across Clearwood before midnight, carried from porch to porch, kitchen to kitchen, until nearly everyone in town knew. Someone was missing, and the lake, once a symbol of peace, suddenly seemed menacing. Investigators began asking questions immediately. They checked with boat rental companies and searched the docks for signs of someone unaccounted for, but no one came forward, and no family reported a loved one gone that night. The mystery only deepened as officers scoured the shoreline with flashlights, looking for footprints, clothing, or any clue that could explain who had last been in the canoe. Nothing turned up. The lake gave away no answers. That night, many residents locked their doors for the first time in years. Parents pulled their children inside, and porch lights glowed late into the night. Something about the abandoned canoe made everyone uneasy. It wasn't just the blood. It was the sense of intention, the feeling that whatever had happened wasn't a simple accident. It was deliberate, and in a town where nothing ever seemed to go wrong, that realization was terrifying. Emma Lawson was the kind of person everyone in Clearwood seemed to know, at least by name. She had moved to the town nearly a decade earlier, trading the noise of Toronto for the quiet beauty of the lakeside. Teaching art at the local high school had given her a sense of belonging, and over time she became a beloved figure, not just to her students but to their parents as well. She organized community painting sessions in the summer, created murals in the school hallways, and was often seen riding her bicycle to the farmers market on Saturday mornings. For many in Clearwood, Emma was a symbol of creativity and calm, a gentle presence who lived a simple but meaningful life. When police connected the canoe to her, the town's heart sank. Emma owned a small red canoe, often seen bobbing at the dock behind her cottage, and the leather glove found inside matched a pair she wore on cold mornings while sketching outdoors. The realization spread quickly. This was not just any missing person. This was Emma, their teacher, their neighbor, their friend. Officers went to her cottage that very night. The house itself looked ordinary at first glance. It sat nestled in the woods with ivy creeping up the porch rails and the faint smell of pine drifting in through open windows. But the details inside unsettled investigators. On the easel in the corner of her living room sat a half-finished painting of the lake. The brushstrokes were fresh, the paint still damp to the touch as though Emma had stepped away only minutes before. Nearby, her teacup rested on a small table, half full, with a thin film forming across the surface. Her purse, keys, and wallet sat on the counter untouched. Nothing about the scene suggested she had planned to leave. It looked instead like she had vanished in the middle of her evening routine. Neighbors told police they had last seen her 2 days earlier. She had been on her porch painting as usual, but some mentioned a detail that stuck in their minds. She had paused several times during her work to look across the lake, staring at the far shore as if waiting for someone. Others said she had seemed quieter in recent weeks, more distracted, less eager to chat. At the time, no one thought much of it. But now, with her disappearance, every odd glance and every silence felt heavy with meaning. The investigation deepened the unease. Her bicycle leaned against the side of the house. Her shoes were neatly placed by the door, and the bed had been made. Nothing was out of place except for the absence of Emma herself. Police searched the surrounding woods, bringing in dogs to track her scent. But the trail ended abruptly near the waterline. It was as if she had stepped into the lake and simply disappeared. Rumors began to swirl almost instantly. Some whispered that Emma had secrets, that she wasn't as simple and carefree as she seemed. Others believed she had been lured away, taken by someone who knew her routines. The thought of violence in Clearwood felt almost impossible, yet the empty canoe, the glove, and the half-finished painting told a story that no one could ignore. By the end of that week, posters with Emma's photograph lined the streets, pinned to shop windows and telephone poles. The search for her was no longer just a police matter. It became a community obsession. And still, despite the efforts, Emma was nowhere to be found. The town that once felt so safe now carried an invisible shadow. And no one could shake the feeling that something dark was hiding just beneath the surface of their peaceful lake. The deeper investigators looked into Emma Lawson's disappearance, the stranger the case became. The initial sweep of her cottage and the lake offered little beyond the canoe and the glove, but police widened their search into the thick forest that bordered the water. What they found there transformed the case from a missing person investigation into something that felt far more sinister. About a mile into the woods, officers came across a small clearing that didn't appear on any of the local maps. The ground was blackened with soot as if fires had been burned there repeatedly. Arranged in a near-perfect circle were large stones, and within that circle lay objects that no one in Clearwood could easily explain. Feathers tied with red string, bones that appeared to be animal, melted candle wax pooled in the dirt. Together, they created a scene that felt ritualistic. For a town used to potluck dinners and fishing contests, the discovery was unnerving. It suggested that something secret and organized had been taking place deep in their woods, hidden in plain sight. As the team documented the site, they found a torn page fluttering against the brush. It had been ripped from a sketchbook, and the paper still carried smudges of charcoal. The drawing was unsettling. Faceless figures standing around a fire, their bodies elongated and their hands stretching toward the flames. In the corner, Emma's familiar signature was scrawled in her neat handwriting. It wasn't just a random piece of litter, it was hers. The evidence raised more questions than it answered. Had Emma drawn what she saw in those woods, or had she been inspired by something else, something imagined? For the investigators, the possibility that she had stumbled upon a gathering, something secret and possibly dangerous, could not be ignored. The forest yielded another clue, equally disturbing. At the muddy edge of the lake, not far from the ritual site, investigators found a series of footprints. Some matched Emma's size and tread, consistent with the sneakers left at her cottage. But alongside them were others, larger, heavier, pointing in multiple directions. Whoever had been there was not alone. The prints trailed into the water and stopped abruptly, as though the individuals had stepped into a boat and pushed off. The findings unsettled Clearwood even further. A missing teacher was tragic, but the suggestion of ritual sites, strange sketches, and multiple footprints hinted at something that felt more like a nightmare. Rumors spread quickly. Some whispered about a hidden cult, while others claimed Emma had been involved in the strange gatherings herself. People began to recall odd details. Lights in the forest late at night, unfamiliar cars parked at the edge of town, strangers spotted buying supplies. In a small community, every unusual memory suddenly seemed connected. Despite the unsettling discoveries, the investigation stalled. The footprints led nowhere. The sketchbook page revealed no new information and no body was ever found. Emma's disappearance had shifted from a missing person search into a mystery that seemed larger, darker, and far harder to explain. Clearwood's residents began to look at the woods differently, no longer as a place of peace but as a place of secrets. Something was hiding out there, and the unanswered questions only made the silence heavier. 6 months after Emma Lawson's disappearance, Clearwood was beginning to adjust to life under a heavy shadow. Her posters still clung to shop windows, weathered by rain and fading sunlight, but most people had stopped expecting new developments. The police investigation had grown cold, with no body, no suspects, and only strange fragments of evidence. Then, one bitter winter morning, the silence broke with a discovery that reignited every fear the town had tried to bury. A hunter, walking deep in the forest, stumbled upon something hanging from a tree branch. It was a coat, worn, faded, and instantly recognizable to anyone who knew Emma. The dark green fabric had been captured in countless photographs of her, especially during autumn strolls by the lake. But its placement was what disturbed investigators most. It hadn't been tossed aside or dropped carelessly. It had been draped neatly across the branch as if someone had wanted it to be found. Inside the pocket was an even more chilling detail: a Polaroid photograph. The image was grainy, but there was no mistaking Emma's face. She was standing in the forest clearing where the ritual site had been discovered, the circle of stones faintly visible behind her. Her posture was stiff, her arms hanging unnaturally by her sides, and her expression was blank, almost lifeless. Beside her stood a man no one recognized. He was tall, with a hood pulled over his head, his face partially obscured. Unlike Emma, his stance was casual, almost confident, as though he wanted to be seen. The photo shook the town to its core. For the first time, there was evidence that Emma had been alive after her disappearance. The possibility of her being held somewhere, manipulated or trapped, became impossible to ignore. Yet the Polaroid also created more questions than answers. Who had taken it? Why had it been left there months later? And most disturbingly, was Emma still alive? Or had the photograph been planted as a cruel reminder of what had already happened to her? Police analyzed the photo, searching for clues. The style of the Polaroid suggested it was modern, not something decades old, and the background matched the clearing perfectly. But no trace of the man's identity could be uncovered. No fingerprints were found on the coat or the photograph. Whoever left them behind had been careful. The discovery fueled speculation throughout Clearwood. Some believed it confirmed the existence of a secret group hiding in the woods, people who had taken Emma for reasons no one could yet understand. Others insisted it was staged, that Emma herself had left the coat and photo behind as part of an elaborate plan to vanish and start over. In the absence of hard facts, theories grew wild and uncontrollable. The renewed investigation searched the forest tirelessly for weeks, hoping to find the man in the photo, or even Emma herself. But nothing else surfaced. No campsites, no hidden cabins, no belongings, just empty woods stretching endlessly around the lake. The coat and the photograph remained the only proof that Emma's story hadn't ended the day her canoe was found. For the people of Clearwood, the Polaroid became more than evidence. It became a symbol. It was proof that something had happened in their town that no one could explain. And the fact that Emma's eyes in the picture seemed so hollow haunted everyone who looked at it. It was as if she were alive, yet already gone. By 2008, more than a decade had passed since Emma Lawson vanished. And for many in Clearwood, the case had become less a crime than a ghost story whispered to newcomers. Children dared each other to ride bikes past her empty cottage, and locals still avoided the stretch of woods where her coat and photograph had been found. Officially, the investigation was closed. Unofficially, the silence never felt like closure. Then, just when the town had begun to let the memory fade, construction workers digging near the lake uncovered something that reignited the nightmare. They had been preparing land for a new dock when a shovel struck metal. At first, they assumed it was just buried junk, but as they unearthed the object, they realized it was a sealed metal box, rusted yet intact. The police were called immediately. When the box was pried open, Everyone expected to find mundane belongings, maybe old fishing gear. Instead, what lay inside stopped the investigation cold. The box contained a stack of sketchbooks, all belonging to Emma. Each was filled with drawings that charted a disturbing descent. The earliest pages carried the soft landscapes she was known for, quiet images of the lake, cottages, and forests. But as the books progressed, the art grew darker. The figures she once drew as faceless became sharper, their bodies cloaked in robes, their hands elongated, reaching out from shadows. Again and again, she sketched the same spiral symbol, etched onto trees or hovering above gatherings of figures in masks. The spiral appeared in almost every drawing from her final months, as though it had consumed her imagination. What unsettled investigators most was that many of the drawings seemed to mirror the ritual site discovered years earlier. Stones arranged in a circle, candles flickering, faceless groups huddled around firelight. It was all there, captured long before police had stumbled across the clearing. Had Emma been documenting something real she had witnessed? Or had she been losing herself to her own dark visions? The sketchbooks weren't the only contents. At the bottom of the box lay scraps of fabric tied with red string, nearly identical to the items once found in the forest clearing. It was as if Emma had been collecting or replicating the strange artifacts. Some speculated she had been researching a hidden cult, trying to capture their symbols and practices through her art. Others believed the opposite, that she had been drawn into the rituals herself, leaving behind evidence of her transformation. The discovery divided Clearwood. Some demanded the case be reopened, convinced Emma had uncovered something dangerous that led to her disappearance. Others insisted the sketchbooks revealed her unraveling mind, proof that her disappearance was the tragic result of her own choices. Without new leads, police could take the evidence no further. The box became another haunting artifact, filed away in storage, its mysteries left unsolved. To this day, Emma Lawson's fate remains unknown. Was she taken by a hidden group that operated in the woods, silenced for what she discovered? Did she choose to vanish, leaving behind her art as cryptic clues? Or did something even stranger unfold, something no one in Clearwood could fully comprehend? The only certainty is the unease her story left behind. Emma's canoe, the Polaroid, and the spiral sketches remain unanswered pieces of a puzzle, fragments of a story with no clear ending. And that uncertainty is what makes her case stand out among Canada's most bizarre and chilling murder mysteries.